Welcome back to the Couch GM podcast. Today I have on Mariners starting pitching prospect Logan Evans to talk through his story up to this point. He's another diamond in the rough, late round draft pick for the Seattle Mariners that has flourished in the minor leagues so far, and he's one of the next guys to make his debut this season. We get into his 6-pitch arsenal and much more, so make sure to like and subscribe to the Couch GM for more content like this. And this podcast is sponsored by Black Label Supplements. They're a third-party tested, athlete-approved supplement company here in the Pacific Northwest. They're my go-to for all things pre-workout, post-workout, creatine, you name it. Make sure to check out blacklabelsupplements.com. Use code CouchGM for 15% off. And if you or someone you know is thinking of buying, selling, or refinancing a property in the Pacific Northwest, make sure to reach out to myself, Connor Webb, the Couch GM, as I'm actually a full-time mortgage broker during the day when I'm not on the sidelines interviewing guys. I'm licensed in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California, and Arizona. There'll be a link in the description of this video if you'd like to reach out and connect. And with that, let's get into the podcast. All right, Logan, thank you for joining me on the podcast. Excited to hear some of your backstory as well as your experience so far in the Mariners minor league system. Let's start back with your childhood and your upbringing, kind of a bit of who you are, how you got into sports. It looks like you were born out of Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Well, thank you for having me first off. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, like you said. Went to Saline area schools my whole entire life. Grew up playing basketball, football, and baseball. I actually enjoyed basketball the most. I think basketball is still my favorite sport, but obviously I think my talents took me towards baseball more. So I played all of those sports throughout high school. I took a few seasons off of both football and basketball just for baseball reasoning, just recruiting stuff, all that different things that you do growing up. But yeah, I was a 3-sport athlete, enjoyed my time to it, and then went on to college where I played at Penn State and Pitt.
So in high school, you mentioned that basketball is still your favorite sport. At which point in your career did you start to realize, hey, I can throw the fastball pretty well, or I can rip a slider? Were you able to dunk in basketball?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I could dunk. That was towards like the end of high school, really. I used to do the tap out. I don't know if it's still called that, but you lay it up, tap the glass. I could do that. I think the first time in like 7th grade, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But I think around that middle school era is when I realized that like baseball was for me. Like the summers are kind of up to whatever you want to do, and I just played summer baseball. Played at a pretty high level doing that. I tried the basketball circuit when I was younger, and I was all right, but not how I stood out in on the baseball field.
Yeah, so I think I saw on one of your Instagram stories that you went to a University of Michigan game. Is that the college team that you watched growing up? And what other sports? I know you're pretty close to Detroit as well. The Tigers, was that your team that you watched? And what teams did you watch?
So I actually grew up a huge Michigan State fan.
Okay.
On the contrary of growing up in Ann Arbor, obviously right on campus, my entire family, my brother, mom, and dad were all Michigan State fans, but everybody in the extended fam is like all in Michigan. My uncle is actually the radio guy for the team, so if you ever listen to the game, he's the one calling it.
Oh, okay.
But I grew up like we're anti-Michigan in this house. But everything else, yeah, we grew up Lions fans, Tigers fans. We got to watch the Wings when they were good. Not big hockey family, but when they're good, we turned them on. And then I actually like love watching the Pistons. I know some people don't really watch the NBA, but I enjoy watching them, and hopefully they're on the come up here soon. But the Lions are looking good. So
Yeah, Lions are really good, and the Tigers are on the come up too. They've got a solid farm system, and they got some pieces working. So,
absolutely.
did you go to many Tigers games? Was there certain players, I guess, throughout the league that you watched? And at what point did you start to realize that maybe pitching was the route that you'd go?
Yeah, for sure. I take the liking to pitching always. I just enjoyed throwing and trying to make it move as much as I can and try to throw it as hard as I could. So I always enjoyed pitching. And then obviously I got the luxury of growing up watching Scherzer and Verlander and that entire staff that won Cy Youngs there in 2013, 2014. So that was cool. And then on top of that, we got to watch Miggy in his Triple Crown years. So it was exciting, and I think that's kind of what took me into pitching is my liking for Justin Verlander. I just studied his mechanics. I didn't really ever throw like him, but I just loved to watch like the intent and the fire that he would bring to the ballpark every day. So I would say when I was right around there, 13, 14 is when I realized that pitching was kind of my route to high levels.
Absolutely. And then throughout high school, walk me through when you first realized that you were getting recruited and, deciding on where you'd want to go to college. Eventually you'd end up at Penn State. Walk me through that process.
I started to get recruited around eighth grade, so a little bit before high school. I was like recruited by a lot of schools, but never really got that like official offer. I'm sure the people watching know that baseball offers come a little different than the football and basketball ones, where they come in like tens and 20s and 30s. Usually each baseball guy gets like 5 to 7. So I started to get recruited around then, but Penn State was really one of the only schools, like the bigger schools, that offered me a scholarship. And I just took a liking to them. Like I said, grew up in a Big Ten family, close to home. I knew some stuff about Penn State, and then obviously pretty good academics. And I was just looking at it from a standpoint too of like, if baseball doesn't work out, where would I want to go to school? And Penn State was the ultimate decision, and attended there for 2 years.
Yeah, so your first year was a COVID year, which must have been pretty weird. Was there even students on campus at all?
So yeah, so my freshman fall, I actually went there in the summer of 19 and then the fall of 19. So there was like, I mean, it was regular, just ton of
Yeah.
students, whatever. And then that spring is when COVID hit in 2020, and yeah, it just took a weird turn. I actually didn't even get to stay on campus. I lived here at my parents' house with one of my teammates from Pittsburgh, and we just trained out of here and did our thing. So yeah, it was definitely weird for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, so those 2 years that you were at Penn State, it looks like you were a relief pitcher. So walk me
Mhm.
through those first couple years in college, what they expected you to do and how you performed.
It was definitely a lot of lessons that I got to learn throughout that. I learned what it was to be like. I was actually the last recruit in my recruiting class because I had committed to Army in high school. So there's a whole recruiting thing. But yeah, I was the last guy. So kind of, not, I wouldn't say an afterthought, but like again, like how I was drafted to the Mariners, just kind of a later round guy or a later pickup. So
Mhm.
I just worked from the bottom up. I was a reliever, and it was a little bit weird for me and kind of threw me off of my like routines and everything. But it was cool, like learn adaptability and all those different things. I performed not how I'd like. I had a little bit of control issues, but I learned my mechanics at Penn State. I learned how to throw hard. That's when I had like my first initial velocity jump. And then I just was in awe of being in college and just being away and being with like a great team. Me and the head coach didn't see eye to eye, and that's eventually why I transferred. But I loved every second at Penn State and still talk to those guys.
What led to that initial velocity increase that you saw? And then also, how many pitches did you have at that point in time?
So I had fastball, like a slidery, more like a cutter thing, and then like a changeup at that time. So 3 pitches. And I got to work with a lot of guys, naming a few: Bailey Dees in the Yankees organization, Kyle Verbitsky, who's now in the Orioles organization, and just a lot of those guys who actually ended up going to play pro ball, but they were just a bit older than me. And they taught me routines. They taught me what it's like to do your mobility before throwing, and what good mechanics should look like and how should you transfer energy. And then that also led me to Tread Athletics out of North
Okay.
Carolina. So I worked with them, and they helped me a lot with explosive movements, but also just like patterning up my mechanics. And that helped me go from, I think I was probably 88 to 92 my freshman and start of the sophomore year, and then by the end of my sophomore year, I was topping. I hit 98, and I was sitting probably 95, 97.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So tread athletics played into that.
absolutely.
Also, how much do you long toss or do you long toss?
I long toss here and there, more so in the off season. During season, I'll probably go, if we're starting at the foul line, maybe back to the edge of the infield dirt, but I don't really go beyond that during season.
Gotcha. After those first 2 years at Penn State, you transfer over to Pitt. So walk me through that transition. You moved back to the starting rotation.
Yep.
What was that
Yep.
like?
So going into the portal, that's what I was looking for. Just an opportunity. I knew my numbers weren't great out of Penn State, but I always kind of believed in myself. And a lot of the phone calls that I actually had when I was in the portal was a lot of those coaches talked to me about like, yeah, your walk numbers are up or this and that, but like the misses weren't big. I wasn't hitting the backstop. I was just missing like to my high and arm side a little bit and then yanking a few. So
Mhm.
like you have the potential to start, but we'd love to see you added another pitch. So I actually added a cutter during that time, and then I was getting recruited by a few schools, and it kind of came down to Michigan State, Kent State, Pitt, and then actually, funny enough, Washington State.
Okay.
Um, and Coach Bell is just like, hey, you know what? Like the transfer portal is its own thing. He's like, I went JUCO. I needed a fresh start. I know what it's like. He's like, I'm gonna hold nothing against you. I'm just gonna let you kind of come in, and if you earn your spot, you earn your spot. If you don't, then that's kind of how it was meant to be. So I ended up taking that offer and just running with it.
So then those 2 years as a starter, I assume that you were a starter in high school. What was it
Mhm.
like to be starting on the collegiate level then?
It was awesome. I was just super grateful for the opportunity. I try to make the most of it. Results at some point were so up and down, it was insane. I would have great outings and then I would have miserable outings. But in those times, I learned that just like you got to believe in yourself, really. And if you truly believe that you're doing the right thing each and every day for your success, then it will eventually blossom and you will get that success. So I thought it was awesome. And I just learned a lot of life lessons doing it.
And so did you continually go to tread in the off seasons in North Carolina?
So when I was working with Tread, it was actually remote.
Okay,
That
cool.
was the time of COVID, so it was a remote thing. When I was in the transfer portal, so after my sophomore year, I went out to a place called Push Performance out in the Scottsdale area. Tried that out, and then when I was at Pitt, I felt like I was starting to really piece the puzzle together, and it's pretty expensive training at those places. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna kind of use what I have here and save some money. So I didn't end up working with Tread that much at Pitt, but I was still
Mhm.
using the stuff that they gave me.
Okay. And
Mhm.
then, after that second year at Pitt, you ended up getting drafted in the 12th round with the Mariners. It sounds like you didn't have much contact with the Mariners before the draft, but you had filled out some sort of questionnaire and then they ended up drafting you. Walk me through that process.
So, for the viewers who don't know, you get this Major League Baseball portal thing, and you sign up, whatever. And the Mariners were actually the first one to invite me to that in high school. So this was way back, and I filled out a questionnaire, and then I had redone it my junior year at Pitt. And I, like you said, I didn't really talk to anybody. I didn't know any local scouts. I didn't talk to the cross checkers, nothing like that. So it was a little bit surprising, but yeah, they just kind of gave me that call at the start of day three and was like, "Hey, we're gonna draft you here if you're still available."
So what made you want to go with the Mariners versus maybe sticking around for your senior year?
I think that I heard the reputation of the pitching development. And the biggest thing about pro ball, especially for guys like me towards the later half of the draft, it's kind of just getting your foot in and getting that opportunity to show what you can do. And I didn't want to mess around. I was actually eligible my sophomore year and went undrafted. And that was like, I mean, it's one of the top three feelings I can re-feel every day. Like it's the worst thing ever. Like when I didn't get
Mhm.
drafted, I was just down bad. And I was like, I'm never letting this happen again. So I got drafted and I was like, I'm going to take this opportunity. I'm going to show everybody that I can do what I think I can do.
Absolutely. So then you get drafted by the Mariners. You end up starting a rookie ball. You get moved up to Single A Modesto. What was
Mhm.
that first experience in professional baseball?
When you think of professional baseball, you think of all these like great things, and I show up to San Jose, and the locker room is the smallest thing I've ever seen. So it was definitely like ups and downs, but that team was awesome. It was my first time being on a team that was like dominant since like I was in high school. We went on that 16 game win streak, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. I mean, this is the best way to start pro ball. Ended up winning the championship there and got super tight with a lot of the draft class above me and my draft class. So it was a great experience and just a perfect kickstart into pro ball.
Yeah, that was a stud team. You guys had all of the top prospects in the farm system that were also recently drafted. You end up winning the title. So yeah, I mean, you're imagining professional baseball is like these big stadiums and these pack crowds, and then you show
Yeah.
up like you mentioned San Jose. So yeah, walk me through kind of that off season, and then heading into the next year and that spring training experience.
So after Modesto, I just kind of came home and just wanted to figure out like how can I refine my routines. I realized in pro ball that everybody's got a good throwing program, everybody's kind of got a good mobility circuit, but like what are the extra things that I can do? So I really focus on sleep. I really focus on my eating and my lifting. And then I also added a thing called posture therapy that I found that worked very well for me. So I did that and then just worked on velocity. Towards the end of the year in Modesto, I was probably 93, 94 ish. And I was like, I just want to just raise that, just keep raising it a little bit. So I did that work here in Ann Arbor, threw it into a cage most of the time, just kind of working by myself. Went back out to shove camp in January of this year and started to do all this testing stuff. And at this point, like everybody kind of like knew who I was, but like it was just kind of new draft kit or whatever. And then I remember one day specifically I pulled down, kind of got like a higher velocity. And then I remember that word kind of traveling around and it was like, oh, this kid's kind of got like a good arm. So that was really cool. And then in spring training, yeah, I was throwing the hardest I ever had. And like, there's so many different people out there, so many different scouts, the front office, and not only for the Mariners, but just other networking people. And then I remember Baseball America and a few others came to watch me throw on the backfields. And that's kind of when they posted about me. And then everything just blew up. And it was just exciting at the time because I've never got that recognition. And I was just super grateful to have that opportunity. And then went into the spring training game I threw against the White Sox. I got 8 pitches, and yeah, that was kind of like the biggest thing for me. That was like the cherry on top. That's when everything started to roll.
Yeah, there was word coming out of camp that you were up to 99 miles an hour during spring
hmm
training. Was that
Yeah,
with a
that
two seam or a four seam?
that was with the two seam. That was in the spring training game. Yeah, I was
Okay,
pretty.
amped
I
up.
was getting ready. Yeah, eighth inning. I'm taking a drink of water. I'm getting ready, and I'm just like shaking. I was like, oh, I'm amped up. And I let go of the first one. I was like, oh, it kind of felt good. Came out pretty well, and it was a ground ball to Cole Young at short. So I turn around, look at the big board, and it just said 99, and I was like, whoa. I was like, all right, so I'm feeling pretty good today.
What was that? Was that the fastest that you've ever thrown?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I topped 98 at Penn State, and that was like my
Yeah,
previous PR, and then I said it again there.
yeah, that's wild. So currently you have 6 pitches. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So when did you add those final 2 pitches to your arsenal? At what point?
So when I showed up for draft camp in that July, August time, I had thrown the two seam, whatever. I've always had arm side run. And they're
Mhm.
like, hey, we just want you to add a four seam, which isn't too hard. I was like, all right, sounds good. I just want some carry. So I had those two fastballs, had that slider I was talking about in college, and then added a cutter during my junior off season. And then I had a changeup. So we were just wondering, like, how can we mix that slider up to be where it's like the big sweeper that the Mariners love, and then
Mhm.
have like one with like more depth, that curveball, not really 12-6, but that down towards the 7 o'clock or whatever.
Mhm.
And they just showed me a few different grips and kind of just stuck. And then I was just tweaking them. I've been tweaking them a little, but that's kind of when I created that full arsenal, was right out of draft camp, is when they kind of laid out the blueprint and was like, this is what we want. We want four seam, two seam, cutter, and then sweeper, curveball, changeup.
Yeah, you got a fastball that's moving every direction, and then you got an off speed that's moving every direction.
Yeah.
Uh, since you have a baseball, let's get into those pitch grips and
Yep.
walk me through down the line, and then kind of what your thought process is when you're releasing the ball.
Okay, so this is the four seam, pretty generic. Um, Realistically, on the two seam and four seam, I don't do anything crazy. This is also my two seam right here. Pretty similar, the way I grip it. Uh, and I just try to throw it as hard as I can. For the four seam, like I want carry. So I try to get that like whip action
Mhm.
to try to get that to spin off. And the more spin I can create and more efficient spin should create that carry and resist gravity. And then on the two seam, I naturally make the ball run. I don't get any crazy sink. So I'm not getting that like down here, but I get a lot of that arm side run. And like I said, I do it naturally, so I just throw however I normally do, and just throw it as hard as I can. For the cutter, I was more of an offset four seam, if you can see that, uh, through college and pro ball, and then we call this the Colin Snyder grip, and it's just over this seam right here and kind of cross it. Um, Nothing special either. Really, just kind of curl my wrist, and if I throw it from a natural arm slot, it will create that bullet spin you're seeing there. And this is like the least efficient spin. Obviously, the ball moving this way, and the spin's creating, so it's just going to create straight depth. Um, then onto the breaking balls. Um, for my sweeper, which is the money maker pitch for me, I guess. Around this horseshoe, right? I kind of grip it here, try to stay uh, in that pocket, feel this lace back here, um, and I naturally spin it like very well, um, like I don't really know how I do it. To be honest, I can't really explain it. I just do it. But I just pull down at that 7 o'clock, and when I pull down, it creates this kick that creates this side spin. And I'm looking for this seam right here to create this one seam orientation, is what we call it. So if you spin it at a higher rate, you'll just see one red line. I would like for that to be at like that 9 o'clock, and that creates the movement straight to the left.
Mhm.
And then going from this horseshoe and just moving up right there allows me to create this four seam spin. So four seams here, right? Four seam forward is the curveball action. And I try to pull it down like this, but when I'm releasing, because I do have that 3/4 arm slot, the axis of the ball tilts this way. So then we get that four seam spin on that axis, and that creates it to go down towards that 7, 8 o'clock ish and gets more depth. And then I had the regular circle change that kind of everybody throws up until this year, and I got to work with Greg Maddox's pitching coach. His name was Dick Pohl, and he kind of taught me that because it has similar spin to my two seam. But the Mariners actually proved to me that hitters only can recognize spin, but they can't process it. So they see the spin, they can walk back to the dugout and say, "Oh, I saw a two seam spin," but in the moment when they're hitting, they can't be like, "Oh, that's the changeup," because I see the two seam spin, because it takes way too long, you know? So I was like, all right, I don't want to mimic my two seam because I'm not getting a lot of action on it. Just getting that arm side. I want more depth. So then I went to this two seam and just offset it. And similar to the slider, sorry, you can see that. Similar to the slider, I'm looking to get that one seam spin, right? And then when I throw it here on this axis. So we're getting the one seam spin down to the right. And then that's pretty much my entire arsenal there with grips and explanation on why I throw it. And there's a million different ways. I was talking on another podcast yesterday. This two seam grip that I'm showing you, whoever's watching, might not work for you, but if you offset it a little, or you grip up, or you find that a one seam works, there's so many different grips out there. Just try to like manipulate it and make the ball move however you'd like.
That was a great breakdown. And
Yeah.
like you mentioned, it depends on someone's hand shape. You know, the finger length. Someone might have a longer middle finger compared to their pointer, so you have to grip it
Yeah.
differently to get it to do the same thing.
Hmm.
Kind of backing up a little bit. So that cutter that you're describing, is that
Yeah.
similar to like a gyro? Is that what they would call like a
Yes.
gyro
Yeah.
slider? Okay,
Yeah. So there's so many different terms, and a lot of the
right.
like fans, I'm sure, don't really understand it. But so natural cutter is resisting gravity a little, so it's staying up and then moving to your glove side if you're a righty, or I guess both sides, but your glove side normally. A gyro just means that it gets more depth. So when we're talking on the XY axis, if a perfect gyro is 0, 0, so if a ball with gravity with no laces and you were to just throw it at that velocity it comes out, it just does this natural gravitational pull, right? So
Mhm.
that's what we're looking for on the gyro. Um, normal cutters get that more lift, so it's like 10 inches higher than a normal gravity ball would be at. And then it moves a little to your glove side, like I'd said. But the gyro is just so effective because when you're growing up playing baseball, every time you see someone throw it, they have that arm action, whatever it is. Some people cut it, some people arm side run, some people have that lift or whatever. But the gyro really throws off the hitter because no one just sees a gravity ball. And I don't know why they don't call it a gravity ball, but gyro is what stuck, and that's kind of what you're aiming for with a gyro.
Awesome. And then that sweeper or the slider that looks like a Matt Brash grip.
Yeah,
Um,
he kind of does the broken middle finger thing, and I
yeah,
tried
right.
that. I I just heard some people get injured with it, and I don't really need uh, too much leverage with my slider. Like I said, I kind of spin it at a higher rate. So I just did what's comfortable and what I can locate the best. And I felt that this was it. Yeah, there's sometimes I just want to really grip it and throw it, but that's a lot of the times where I'm just yanking it and it's kind of stuck on the fingers a little. But yeah, that Matt Brash is definitely why a lot of the Mariners players throw sweepers because his is absolutely nasty.
Yeah, and Baseball America actually came out with an article that we'll get into in a bit about the Mariners minor league system in general. They're ranked
Yep.
number 2 overall in hitting, and, or number 2 overall in pitching, and number 4 overall in hitting. And they have
Yeah.
like the most horizontal break out of any organization. They throw the
Yeah.
most two seams. So
hmm
yeah, I guess I'm kind of curious on your thought with all of that. Is that something that the Mariners are now putting into the minor league system? Is that because you look at the last wave of guys that came up, Bryce Miller, Brian
Yep.
Wu,
hmm
Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, they all had power four seam fastballs and later
hmm
on learned the two seam, and now they all learned the splitter.
Yeah.
Throughout the minor leagues, yeah, throughout the minor league system, are they now really pushing the two seam?
Yeah, if you look at baseball on a really broad spectrum, dating back to like the Sandy Koufax, like he had the ride fastball, and everybody loved that because you get the strikeouts, and then everybody's like, "Oh, I got this new invention. Let's try to get ground balls because that's the easiest to field or whatever." So then everybody goes to the sinker, and then a few years ago, like you said, those guys coming up. They're like, oh, I have this crazy invention. Let's try to strike them out instead of get ground balls. So we go back to the four seam. Now baseball's going back to the two seam for some organizations, other ones, but obviously in that article, I know what you're talking about. You can
Yeah.
see that we really shoot for that east to west. I wouldn't say that they're forcing guys to use two seam or four seam, but when you're naturally throwing at your hardest velocity, a lot of people's mechanics will take them to have arm side run. So that natural two seam. A lot of the four seam guys, they do throw hard and obviously they throw it at an incredible rate, but it's just so much less natural to throw way over the top, right, than on the side. So that's why I kind of think that they're going towards that. I don't really have the exact answer, but yeah, we do have a lot of guys that shoot for that east to west arsenal.
Yeah, because the Mariners minor league system as a whole is last in whiff rate. So I imagine that obviously the dominate the zone mentality is a part of that. They're just trying to live in the zone. They're not trying to miss barrels necessarily or miss bats. So that's why they're not getting the whiff. And then with their four seam fastball, they have the most horizontal break and
hmm
slowest velocity on four seam fastballs out of any minor league system.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your breakdown of what would make a four seam fastball have horizontal break. Is it just the release angle?
Yeah. So like, kind of nerding out on this stuff, but I
I love
hope
it.
people take away from it. So we talked about that axis, right? So there's this axis, and you can just keep going around. A lot of those teams that have the uh, higher vertical break, right? Their access, I'm sure, throughout their minor leagues is more at that 12 o'clock. With the Mariners, uh, you can still get lift with a ball with the four seam, right? The wind is going to push it up, but our axis is tilted probably down here. That would be my explanation. I haven't
Yep.
seen the entire numbers, but that would be my explanation on why we have the most horizontal break is because we are throwing that four seam grip, right? It's classified as a four seam, but the axis is probably off a little. A lot of the times when you get that axis up, you're actually cutting it just a little bit. So you see this, but when you're coming through, it's actually at an angle and then you're releasing. for guys I'm in the minors with the Mariners that I've seen, a lot of us throw on the side of the ball. So that would be my guess on why we have more horizontal break than anybody with the four seam.
That makes sense. And then, yeah, with your guys' two seams, you're second in the league in stuff plus, you're first in horizontal break again.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most two seams thrown out of any organization in the minor leagues. And then adding to that, the slider, you have 26% above average horizontal break compared to the average organization, which is
Is that major
first,
league or is
first in
that just
baseball.
minors?
That's just minors.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so it's like it's just pretty cool to see, as I described earlier, that wave of guys that came through with a certain arsenal. Now the next wave is coming through. It's going to look completely different, but it's still just as effective.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting. I mean, I just love being in this organization, just being surrounded by such great players, not only on the pitching side, but on the offensive side as well. But like you said, this wave of pitchers is definitely going to be different from what the Mariners fans are seeing right now, but still exciting. I feel like when you look at it as a whole, I mean, Baseball America ranked us, I think it was like tied for first with the Orioles. I want to say it was tied, or second. I don't remember, but it is up there, and we're still getting great results, even though we're not getting like the whiff and the strikeouts like some of the other organizations are. Because at the end of the day, like everybody wants to see the pretty numbers, but if it's going to translate to winning, then I don't think anybody's going to complain if you're winning a World Series with having the least amount of strikeouts. You know.
We'll take that. We'll take ground balls all day, double play.
Exactly. Exactly. Makes the job easier on us too.
So obviously, there's yourself, who's the top pitching prospect in the Mariners system right now and closest to making that next step. What are who are some other names throughout the organization that you've played with or that you've seen, both on the maybe the pitching side and the hitting side, that we should look out for?
Yeah. I appreciate the kind words, but I think there's so many people in this organization, especially on the pitching side, that I don't know if I can claim the top prospect. But two of my like best friends in this organization, Brandon Garcia and Michael Morales, I know you guys have probably heard a lot about them, but they're both insane at what they do as well. Brandon is, and he's just amazing, making the ball move. He throws such a high velocity as a lefty, and he's just taken a huge step forward this year. And then Michael Morales, he's just a pure workhorse. Like I said, like I mean, I think he actually strikes out the most guys out of all three of us. But like a lot of people are like, like maybe he doesn't got the strikeout stuff, maybe he doesn't got the velocity. I'm like, dude, he's 21. He was 21, turning 22 maybe this year in Double A. I was like, he was dominating, and he's got such a bright future ahead. Then you got guys like Jimmy Joyce and Marcelo Perez, Tyler Cleveland, all these guys that like filter down. And I'm missing names for sure. And I don't mean any disrespect by that, but like there's guys that are going to be major league pieces that are still really good. And maybe they're not going to be the ace, quote unquote, but they're really good. And then on the hitting side, I think we have a crazy future ahead. I mean, starting with Colt and Cole, both up the middle. I mean, they're amazing to watch. 18, 19, 20 years old, like hanging with the big dogs. It's so impressive. And they just make baseball look so natural. Harry Ford has the quickest hands I've ever seen, great discipline, has an elite eye, and just a great human being all around. And everybody really is in the Mariners org, which is awesome. And then Johnny Farmello and Michael Arroyo and Laz Montez, and like I'm sure I'm still forgetting more, but like it's like how could you not be excited about the future, because there are so many great players coming up, and I've gotten to play with them in Modesto or in Arkansas, and we've won both years, and I know that doesn't translate exact to the major leagues, but like you don't really teach winning. Like you kind of just either have it or you don't. And I think a lot of the players in our minor leagues right now have that feel to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. We can go on for days with these names. Like the
Days.
Mariners farm system is stacked, and it's rated one of the top in baseball. And these
Mm.
next few years, like it's going to be wave after wave of continued talent that's coming through. So it's really exciting times.
It is. It is. And the cool thing about it too is it's not just like a lot of these guys are getting drafted super high. And I even mentioned Ryan Stallone and Durangelo, and those
Durangelo.
guys are going to be insane too. I haven't even seen them play, but they're going to be nasty.
Mhm.
But the Mariners are just so good at developing and so good at simplifying the game, and it's not like they just take raw talent and just kind of refine them. Like they really teach them how to be ball players, how to be pros, and it's just exciting to watch.
Absolutely. Troy Taylor was a name that made the jump this last year in the bullpen. He's got insane stuff like a 99-mile-an-hour sinker. How much
Yeah.
did you see of him in Arkansas?
So when I was playing with him in Arkansas, he came up for 2 months, maybe a little longer than that, or maybe a little short. I'm not sure exactly. But that's when I was kind of doing my transition to the bullpen. So I got to talk to him a lot. Great human being, best work ethic around. Dude's an absolute grinder. And we are all so excited for him to go up. And he obviously did his thing, and no one really expected anything less. But I got to watch him just go about his work, and he was such a pro, and he really knew exactly what he wanted to do every day to make him better. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Just he had belief in himself, and he was another 12th rounder the year before me, and we talked about that, like kind of just back against the wall, get an opportunity, make the most of it, and yeah, it was just really exciting. And I think a lot of the pitchers now are going to take strides just like him, where start getting up there and just showing the world what we can do.
Absolutely. Let's get back into your story a bit. Let's get into 2024. So you
Hmm.
exit spring training. You start in Arkansas. You start with 10 starts out of the rotation to begin the year. And
Hmm.
then injuries happen to the Mariners bullpen. And you get a phone call during a certain breakfast. Can you walk me through
Yeah.
that story?
Yeah, so I'm whipping up breakfast, just my natural like eggs and egg sandwich, whatever, nothing crazy. And I kind of just see this like random area code calling me, and I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna pick that up because that just always happens. And as like I'm my phone's sitting down to my left, and I'm making my food or whatever. So I was like watching a YouTube video at the time. I don't even remember what I was watching. And I just see the voicemail start to like kind of like Surrey or whatever, like does the typing
Transcription?
for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I was in it. The first like 4 or 5 words were like, "Hey, it's Jerry Dipoto with the Seattle Mariners." I was like, "Oh boy!" I was like, "All right, this is kind of sketchy, but I'm just gonna pick up." Like middle of his voicemail, so he's telling me this voicemail, and I'm like, "Hello," and then we have that conversation, and just smiling ear to ear, and he was kind of laying out the plan of that transition to the bullpen and what the hopes are, and if it doesn't work out, what's going to happen. And he was just super kind, and also just like transparent, which I loved. Like he laid out everything. He's like, if it doesn't work, this is what's going to happen. If it works, this is what's going to happen. If it takes you a little bit longer, this is how it's going to go down. So I felt like I had a full plan going into it, but I also was jacked up on adrenaline too. I was like, I'm talking to Jerry right now during breakfast. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, you don't need coffee that morning.
No, no, absolutely not. I was already jacked up for sure.
So you start the year with 10 starts out of the rotation. You had like a 1.23 ERA. You had some crazy numbers. Walk me through
Mhm.
that transition to the bullpen. How did your entire routine change in that experience?
It was good. It was a lot of variability. I loved it. I think it threw me off of like what I knew in pro ball, which I think I needed, because at that time, not to say I was big headed, but I was just kind of like, oh, this is easy. If I just go out and execute my plan, great results are going to happen. I found that in Modesto, and then I came to Arkansas and found the same results. And then I went to the bullpen, still had that confidence I had. I don't really know if I really had a routine. That's the biggest change.
Hmm.
As a starter, you know exactly how your week's going to go, and you have it planned out. As a bullpen guy, I could do only so much because, like you said, like I don't know when I'm pitching, so there's a big change. But I just felt like once you got in there and got into the flow of everything, like it was still the same game. Maybe a little bit darker outside, the lights are on, but nothing crazy. And then yeah, I just ran into a few of the bumpy outings. I think there were like two in there, maybe three. But yeah, it was good for me to have like a punch in the face really, and things not work out exactly how they're transcripted for me.
Yeah, face some adversity.
Hmm.
Sounds like they connected you with Matt Brash because Matt Brash made a similar transition in his career. He started out as a starter. They moved
Hmm.
him to the bullpen. He saw a lot of success. What were those conversations with Matt and his advice?
Yeah, I got to talk with Brash right after that phone call with Jerry. probably just a day or two later. And we were just talking about what he did, and what he found success with, and also what the differences were between me and him, and not try to copy exactly what he did. I'm a big plyo routine guy. I love to like do all my different movements, even with med balls and body blades, all that type of stuff. He's just a natural thrower, and it's exciting to watch, but I couldn't do it. He kind of just does his J bands, doesn't do any plyo balls, and does his thing, rips 100, and has the best sweeper in the game. So he was telling me that like just kind of realize it's the same game and keep your head up, and there's going to be more ups and downs in the bullpen, but as long as you get out of there with a zero, if it's 3 walks and you turn a triple play, or you have 3 strikeouts, like you're doing your job with a zero. So he was just giving me the whole breakdown on the mindset and what his routines were and how he transitioned. But he was just super nice and open with me.
How does the approach as a starting pitcher differ from one of a relief pitcher? Like if you're a relief pitcher, you got an inning, are you out there trying to strike guys out more? Are you trying to miss bats, or are you still trying to live in the zone with that same mentality?
I think that's where I kind of messed up a little. As a starter, I just love to be relaxed, trust in my game plan, get ahead of guys, and then use my stuff when I need to. As a reliever, for sure, you get that adrenaline jump, just because it's later in the game and you're going in for 1 inning. But I think I tried too much of the throwing hard and just like becoming a relief pitcher instead of a starter. When in reality, I should have just taken the same mindset of just it's just getting ahead and then putting away guys. If you strike them out, like I said, you strike them out. If you let up a ground ball, you let up a ground ball. But as long as you're getting a zero, I kind of messed it up a little, I would say, towards the end of my bullpen stint. But like I said, I thought it was a good thing to be able to learn and use that moving forward.
On your start days, are you calm, cool, and collected, or are you like Walter to where he like brings out his alter ego and he's a totally different person? Like, don't talk to him.
No, yeah, I mean, no, I'm super laid back. Like, I'm cool with talking to people at any point. Like, even if during the game, like middle innings, like I'm talking to them about the game, or even sometimes some random stuff. I don't like to like make the situation bigger than it is, because at the end of the game, it's a kid's game, right? And I've been doing it my entire life. I don't need to make it bigger if I'm in T-Mobile or if I'm in Modesto, California. So.
Mhm.
I just try to like stay calm, and then if I stay calm too, I don't like play the game in my head. I'm not thinking like, oh, what if I don't get the first guy out, or what if I strike the first guy out? Just things that could happen that are out of my control. So I can see how like other people are super jacked up and stuff, but it's just not me.
For sure. And then, you move back to the starting rotation. What was it like to get back in the groove of things out of the rotation?
Yeah, at that point, that's when everybody was like hitting their stride. We were a little bumpy at the start, and that's when I came back, and the starting rotation was me, BG, Mike, Juan, and then Scoot. We all called each other the Red Coats, and that's kind of when we took over, and we're like, you know what, like this is go time. Like we're getting towards the end of the season. It was exciting. I felt like I didn't miss a beat. I wish the build up didn't take as long, but for my health and everything, I feel like I needed to build up again. And I appreciate the Mariners always doing that for me, always looking out for my health first. So yeah, it was exciting to get back, and I just feel like I'm in my flow state or in my natural state when I'm starting. So it was cool.
And then walking through, this off season, what are your goals this off season? What are you working on? Are you also doing like the remote training type thing?
No, I'm not. I kind of just did what the Mariners prescribed me, and then add my own stuff like I did last off season. And realistically, a lot of the goals at this point in my career are going to be the same: maintain or add velocity, preferably add. But if I maintain velocity, that's also fine. Just get ready for the season and just have my body feeling healthy going into it. I don't want any injuries or stuff to like prohibit me during spring training and into the season. And then, I mean, just prepare myself to win at all costs. That's like the most exciting part of the game. I mean, that's how you do it. Like having the ring ceremonies, having the dog piles at the end of the year, like that's the most exciting part about it. And that can be hopefully for me in the majors, but if it's in AAA or AA, or if I got sent down, like wherever it is, really just being able to compete and trying to win at all costs.
During the minor league season, how locked in is the team on how the actual Mariners are doing? Are you guys watching games, or are you just kind of staying locked into what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I for me and a lot of the guys we watch the teams. Sometimes it's just personal relationships. I'm a big fan of the Mariners now. Like I really enjoy watching their games and everything they're about.
Mhm.
And then some guys just don't really care for it, and that's fine. I mean, it kind of is personal preference. But I just like to keep updated because you never know if your name's gonna get called, and you want to kind of know everybody who's on the team, but also like what you're walking into, what type of situation you're walking into. So I got to keep up with the team a lot this year, and I had a lot of fun watching them.
Did you guys have any rivalries with like other teams down in the minor leagues? I know like some of the systems have are in the same division as the big league teams. So
Hmm.
was there some like matchups that meant a little more down there?
Yeah, I don't think there is a big rivalry in the majors between the two organizations, but us and the Cardinals, the Springfield Cardinals, we just didn't get along. They were, for the most part of the year, the best team in our part of the league. They won the first half. We absolutely choked the first half. But we lost to them, and we had a lot of head to heads that just kind of got heated, and then we took care of them in the playoffs. So it was exciting, but we came out on top.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then current communication with guys in the rotation. Have you gotten any other pieces of advice from some of the starters, or is that like a spring training thing?
I think hopefully that'll be a spring training thing. I got to talk to Logan last year about his splitter, and that's at the time where I was just messing around. I was seeing if I could get a splitter. I really can't. But I was just trying to pick his brain about all of that, and I just wanted to learn on a deeper level, like how he thinks.
Mhm.
I felt like that was how I could start the conversation, but realistically, I just wanted to pick his brain, just because I am so impressed with him. I haven't got to talk to any other starters. When I have a chance, I'll absolutely pick their brain. I want to definitely talk to Kirby. Not that like a lot of people have compared us exactly, but we do have a similar like big arsenal, can kind of control it and then have a few good like pitches. I know his is like a really good splitter or whatever, and he has insane location. But yeah, like there's been comparisons between me and him, so I would love to pick his brain and see what he's got for me.
Yeah, some people refer to him as the scientist. It's like you could see him when it zoomed in on him on a start day. He's up there on the mound.
Mhm.
He's like thinking of how he can make the ball move a certain way, and he's
Yeah,
like, okay, he could just place it. I mean, he has all time type command and control, and then he
yeah,
could do whatever he wants with the ball. It's
yeah.
yeah.
Elite problem solver. That's really what it boils down to. Is like you're never gonna throw the ball the same exact way. I'm sure it's always similar, but like obviously he's figured out how way to command the ball however he releases it.
And if you did want to mess around with the splitter again, definitely get in contact with Bryce Miller. I mean, he learned it this last offseason. He
Hmm.
ended up having one of the best splitters in baseball. His second year in the big leagues, he finished like top 10 in that range of Cy Young voting. I mean, three of the guys were in that top 10 of Cy Young voting range. I mean,
Yeah.
the talent is insane.
The starting staff is just stupid. Like I try to explain it to my buddies that maybe don't understand it fully, or just like family members over this winter break, and I'm like, you guys have no clue. Like this starting five is like, it's not
All
it's
time.
not like I don't know how like you're an opponent and go into a series against them and be like, we have a chance like against this team to score a few runs. Like you really don't.
I'm going to face 95 to 99 with elite movement, spin rate, all this stuff. And everyone, even if they're all righties, they're all like different arm slots, they're all different arsenals, but it's all the same power stuff with the elite movement.
Yeah.
It's I made a video on it this last offseason that it was going to be the best rotation in Mariners history, and it proved to be that. It was
Yeah.
the best rotation that the Mariners have ever had.
Spot on for sure. Absolutely.
What are your goals for 2025?
One, stay healthy. That's always number one. Stay healthy. Be on the field. Number two for me is reach my childhood dream. Like go play in the majors. I've been dreaming of that moment my entire life. So I'm definitely trying to do that. And then I think my third goal this year is wherever I'm at, and I felt like I did a good job this year, but just like being grateful. I talked to regular people and my family members this winter break about like at the end of the day, like you have a bad start or things aren't going right for me in the baseball world. Like I'm playing baseball. Like rarely do people get to actually say that like they get to do exactly what they wanted from when they were 5 years old till for me 23, but and beyond that. Like I'm just trying to like be grateful, and that's honestly like the three goals for me is just stay healthy, make to the majors, and just realize the great opportunities I have.
Love it. Really appreciate your time, Logan, coming on, sharing your story, and I'm looking forward to seeing you up there in T-Mobile Park at some point soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You got it.